The French War in Syria, also known as the Franco-Syrian War, was a military conflict that took place between 1920 and 1921. It was fought between the French colonial forces and Syrian nationalists who sought to establish an independent state. The conflict had its roots in the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the subsequent division of its territories by the victorious Allied powers. This article provides a comprehensive overview of the French War in Syria, including its causes, major events, and outcomes. Causes of the French War in Syria. The French War in Syria was a result of the French colonial expansionist policies in the Middle East, which aimed to establish a sphere of influence in the region. France, which had been a major player in the Ottoman Empire, was keen to maintain its influence in the region even after the empire's collapse. In 1919, the French government signed the Sykes-Picot Agreement with Britain, which divided the Ottoman Empire's territories between the two powers. Under this agreement, Syria was placed under French mandate. Syrian nationalists, however, were not willing to accept French rule over their country. In 1919, they formed the Syrian National Congress, which demanded complete independence from France. The French government refused to recognize the Congress and continued to assert its authority over Syria. Major events of the French War in Syria. The French War in Syria began in July 1920, when French forces under General Henry Guéraut marched into Damascus and declared the establishment of the French Mandate of Syria. Syrian nationalists, led by Sultan al-Atrash, immediately launched a revolt against French rule. The Syrian nationalist forces were largely unorganized and lacked adequate weapons and supply, but they managed to launch several successful attacks against French forces. In September 1920, Syrian forces managed to capture the city of Maysalun, which was an important military base for the French. The French responded by launching a massive counter-offensive and succeeded in recapturing Maysalun. The Battle of Maysalun was a turning point in the war, as it gave the French the upper hand and forced the Syrian nationalists to retreat. The French then launched a series of offensives against the Syrian nationalist forces. In November 1920, they captured the city of Homs, and in December, they took over the city of Aleppo. In March 1921, French forces captured the city of Damascus, which effectively ended the war. Outcomes of the French War in Syria. The French War in Syria had significant outcomes for both France and Syria. France was able to establish a firm grip over Syria, which remained a French mandate until 1946. French rule in Syria was marked by significant economic, social, and political changes, including the introduction of modern infrastructure, education, and legal systems. However, French rule was also marked by repression and exploitation, as the French authorities used brutal tactics to quell opposition to their rule. For Syria, the French war had devastating consequences. The war resulted in the loss of thousands of lives and the destruction of much of Syria's infrastructure. The war also contributed to the growing sense of Arab nationalism in the region, which eventually led to the emergence of the Ba'ath Party and the rise of President Hafez al-Assad in the 1970s. The French war in Syria was a significant event in the history of the Middle East. It was a product of French colonial ambitions and Syrian nationalist aspirations for independence. The war had significant outcomes for both France and Syria, and its legacy is still felt in the region today. The war is a reminder of the complex political, economic, and social forces that have shaped the Middle East over the past century.